We would like to carry forward a practice of recognizing the original caretakers of these sacred lands within and throughout Mendocino County. We acknowledge their stewardship of these lands and uplift their legacies as they continue to build and sustain their culture and practices today and for 7 generations. We acknowledge and offer gratitude to these indigenous ancestors and present-day relations of the Caddo, Homo, Yuki, Maidu, Miwok, Nome Laki, Wailaki, and Pit River peoples.
So Nevada County Arts Council is among 13 other organizations across California administering $60 million. Our portion of that for upstate is close to $3.4 million. As part of a new grant program designed to increase public awareness related to water and energy conservation, climate mitigation and emergency preparedness, relief and recovery. So of course that includes fire. What else might it include? Civic engagement, including election participation. How do individuals and communities engage, and how are their voices heard? And how does this connect to health? Social justice and community engagement and public health awareness. We're here with you today because we want to hear from you stories that aren't naturally accessible to us where we are. These will inform our grant guidelines. We hope to keep those guidelines as simple as possible, but we need to learn from you today. So the state's given us this crazy new tool called the California Healthy Places Index. It's a tool which, although at first sight appears very technical, will provide you all the clues you need in dreaming up solutions as artists and as partners with organizations in tackling issues in Mendocino. Mendocino is noted for its distinctive Pacific Ocean coastline, its location along California's Lost Coast, redwood forests, wine production, microbrews, and liberal views about the use of cannabis and support for its legalization.
Definitely have been severely impacted by wildfire, and the arts have been involved in the recovery in multiple ways. There's a mosaic memorial at the Redwood Valley Grange, for example, by Elizabeth Raby, that is a memorial to the 9 people who lost their lives in that in the 2017 fire.
In some places, it's interesting as people will say, you know, I think it's too late. The climate card, it's sailed. You know, it's actually the biggest question I will pose with this as you look at fire and its relationship to your community. It's like, what is our future goal point? What are some ways we can be shifting our relationship with the landscape? So again, thinking about that here in Mendocino, given what you know now, what we all are coming to know, what we might anticipate.
So this is a look as shared from the Healthy Places Index. This is your racial and ethnic demographics. And this becomes very interesting. And when you're thinking of applying for a grant from the California Creative Corps, it's going to be important that you just have a look and see if you can draw correlations between the relative healths of communities and the social and cultural makeup of the map itself gives clues. So here is the Healthy Places Index. We're going to do a kind of live demonstration too, but it's really simple. It's divided into 4 categories. So the dark green implies the healthiest communities when compared with the rest of California. The dark blue imply the least healthy communities when compared with the rest of California. And then the shades of green and the pale blue and the pale green are towards or away from health. So pale blue is not so great, and dark blue is let's look at this together and create some solutions. And the dark green is they're cool, we're not going to give them all the money. You know, when you're in the map and you click on one of these tracks, a bar along the left-hand side opens up and shows you these areas called policy action areas. And these are the ways in which the relative health of communities are measured next to one another. So for example, in Mendocino, wherever you see one of those little vertical black lines crossing over into the dark blue areas, that's like a flag for you to look at housing conditions, healthcare access, social factors, etc., etc. We also encourage you to look in the areas that are just pale blue, because within those pale blue areas are also indicators which might be very dark blue, and which are flags and which are danger zones. And you want to be aware of those when you're writing grants, in case you have a project that perfectly matches that challenge.
One of the things that really stands out, the big range in per capita income here in Mendocino that goes from 19, just over, almost 20,000 to 42,000. So a big range in the per capita average income. Housing stood out too. The lowest score for housing was at the 14.3 percentile, and it had low scores with homeowner and renter cost share burden, so looking at sort of the overall cost of living here, and housing habitability. Economic as well as summarized there with some very low numbers in some of the tracks.
Can we click on social really quick?
Sure.
Because the census response rate was really low here, and a lot of the employment would not be captured in this region. There are people who are very busy and they're working hard, but they may not be answering the census.
We have a dying farming business up here, which is marijuana. And since it's been legalized, all the small farmers, and there are a lot of them, are out of business. They're all giving up. So you have a lot of what were hardworking people, though, that wouldn't be listed up here.
There's also people working hard on farms that will not be listed as jobs because they can't, because they're not permitted.
They're undocumented.
There's a lot.
Right.
And not just the undocumented, but the illegal cannabis farms.
Right.
People would not write that they have such a job.
Right.
They show up as unemployed, even though they work dawn to dusk sometimes.
And we're hearing this a lot, presenting the information that we have and then trying to think, well, how can we wrestle with this? What do we do with this information in order to create change?
How do they judge the census response rate if people didn't respond? How do they know? Where are they getting that figure from? They're just guessing how many people didn't fill it out.
And there's so many amazing stories of resiliency and beauty in some of these dark blue regions that's something artists can do, is amplify those stories.
Right.
Put those forward, So yeah, I just wanted to say that because the library in Covelo is such a great example of that. There are many examples. Blackberry Festival, Live Power Community Farm, radio station. So yeah, we don't want to be super doom and gloom about our regions that are not getting high scores, because those stories can be brought.
This is an external agency putting on a perception that may not be valid for that community. So, I'm particularly considering the fact that that's a whole other set of values that the residents in any other place might have, an entirely different value system, especially where it comes to education. And especially when we're talking about Native populations, their perception of education is substantially different than ours. So how do we deal with that differential?
There will be all sorts of nuanced challenges, and I'm pretty sure the Public Health Alliance of Southern California would possibly like to hear about some of this nuance.
And when you said who is left out, when you were describing the community, like we have a high Native American population, we have a high Latino population, but also we have a high back to the land legacy. So that's another community that maybe doesn't like to participate in standard, right? And so what I was thinking when we were talking about education is a lot of people homeschool here. I don't know how that's captured.
So these are the interesting stories that we're nursing out, and I kept repeating that because I wanted Katrina to write it down, because gonna go into the next PowerPoint. Yeah.
Because people in the 70s, a lot of people moved up here from the Bay Area.
What was the Emerald Train from Mendocino, Humboldt, and Del Norte? That was that was, and we were the mecca,
Yeah.
really.
There's a
Yeah.
great oral history project called Promise of Paradise that just came out a couple of years ago to mark the 50th anniversary of the Back to the Land movement. So there could be projects that build on that too.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Another thing that they look at in terms of the health of neighborhoods is this weird thing called retail density, the degree to which a community or an individual has access to the right kind of retail resources. But we ask ourselves, is this a Dollar General, or is it a proliferation that could grow and be nurtured with mom and pop businesses or artisan craft shops that are engineered by artists working in collaboration with Main Street and downtown merchants associations. So there are all kinds of interesting little clues, and it requires that we think about it in a slightly kind of, I hate to use the phrase blue sky thinking way.
This idea of access to parks. In our area, we don't have parks. It's all private property. But then there's this undercurrent of traction with agencies that can actually do anything about it. And I don't know how that could be measured. I mean, in some places, you just go to the city council and say, we want this to happen. And they'll say, sure, we have this fund in this department, and we'll do that. We'll work on that. But we've been told there was a park surveys for the county, and the outcome was, we need more parks. And the answer was, we're not going to make any more parks in your region, period, done.
Coblo, Round Valley.
Yeah, that tract 101 we were just looking at. And so there's this other question of, I guess, it's kind of like an access to resources to propel change in a community, or traction with local government and in addition to, does that government have the capacity to serve those needs? Because I feel like some of these communities, like, sure, we'll get a new traffic light up there, and others is like, we'll wait for 10 years for our chance.
I think also the definition of a neighborhood in relation to this was put together by people who live in an urban area.
Yes,
We don't really have neighborhoods. We have areas like book trails or,
Watersheds.
yeah, or they live up on the Eel River. Or in this county, the native community is extremely connected. There's Round Valley, there's Cobble, there's Coyote Valley, there's Sherwood here in Willits. But when they have native celebrations, they're all connected. And so that's not a physical neighborhood, but it is a community.
Prior to actually finalizing the guidelines for the grant, I think the useful piece here is that you know and we know, those of us who are working on the guidelines, that there may not be perfect matches between a proposal and what we're seeing on this. It's not like an outsider going into Cobolo saying, here's what you guys need. It's the people, the residents of the community itself saying, these are our priorities and this is what we need and want.
Would be important is to ask people here what makes them feel healthy and abundant. Because you were talking about stores, most people I know in Mendocino County feel better if they grow their food, like quietly themselves at home. You're not going to capture that.
Could a project be to create your own Healthy Places Index map of Mendocino with artists? Wouldn't that be fun? What are the factors that might determine how much a county or region will be apportioned in terms of the almost $3.4 million that we have to disperse to artists and organizations working with artists to support them in their capacity? If we were to divide it up by county alone in the most political way, it would be about 108,000 per county. However, with the Healthy Places Index in mind and recognizing that some regions have greater density of those dark blue areas, those less healthy communities, we're going to be considering a variety of factors, such as the degree to which a place has, the darker blue tract, so to speak, the county population, the geographic size, the county tribal and ethnic makeup, the overall proposal strength, and the degree to which the project proposed is likely to provide fodder for a case study for other communities to borrow from later. You know, how can we create a project that can be borrowed the other side of the country or in another rural community? It worked really well here. How can we replicate it there? And then the degree to which could artists work with artists in other counties, for example, and make it a more regional thing where a whole tract of dark blue area is being approached through one project, whether it's in or out of the county.
So like tree canopy being in neighborhoods, you would be shocked how hard it is to explain to a room of government employees why we need trees when all they're hearing is maintenance issues. You know, so I'm, you know, I think there's another way to look at this in terms of, okay, if we're looking at does it represent us accurately, there's some issues there. But can we use these different policies that they're laying out to then kind of hold space for our actual unique value systems, you know?
Each Arts Council will provide technical assistance and support during the grant writing process. And we'll also do, Nevada County Arts Council as the administering organization will also provide, do webinars and have FAQ sheets and be available as well. So we'll be working hand in hand. And we love the fact that the Willits Center for the Arts will also help to mobilize its community, and perhaps you could have a grant writing session here. Or
Just the idea that, you know, we're here on other people's land, if there could be some reparations kind of concept applied, I'm not sure how to apply that mathematically or numerically with ranking and things like that, but to just somehow capture that.
We tried to first break down what is public health and what does it mean to impact public health, and then we kind of dove into how can art impact public health. We tossed that down here a little bit, and we had kind of you shared some of this already in the in your presentation, so I won't go too into it. But we got really inspired by the idea of things that actually impacted the upstream issues. So we talked about transportation. There's a huge need for transportation, and we came up with the idea, I'm sorry, I forgot who mentioned this first, but an art bus that's a demonstration project to actually showcase the issue and create this public art piece.
And I love the fact that you voiced concerns as well. That's just as valid as listening to excitement, because we can't be naive when this much money is on the table and the eyes of the state are upon us, and et cetera, et cetera. So let's do this.